Alrighty, so it's 10 o'clock. Looks like it's time to start. First, let me just say how good it is to be with everybody. You know, these are certainly unusual times. And even in unusual times, it's always good to be together. And I think, you know, times like this brings us all closer and strengthens our bonds and our trust. So again, you know, thanks for making the time today. This will be an interactive discussion. What we're going to do is we're going to leave everybody muted just for sound quality. And what we're going to ask, if you have questions, go ahead and chat them in, and then I'll be able to see them, and then we'll be able to read through them. And during this period of time, we've really endeavored to communicate on a regular basis. And we are literally watching this situation hour by hour. And as you know, we've made a bunch of changes, right? You know, we've launched 2 messages, one on Monday, one yesterday. Lots of emails. You know, Angela and the home office team, Lorraine and Melissa and marketing have done a great job with, researching and coming up with documents on, safely showing houses and things like that. And one of the things I want to say to everybody, first of all, is what a spectacular job you're all doing. You know, these are clearly unusual times. If we get a chance, I'll give you kind of a historical perspective I have on it. But these are unusual times for sure. And you guys are all doing a spectacular job. It's the agent's job to take care of the clients. It's the office and the manager and the administrators, business support specialist job to take care of the agents, and then it's home office's job to help take care of everybody. And we have such a gifted group of people in this company, all the way around, right? Agents, offices, support staff, sales directors, home office. For as hard of a time as this is, it's really been pretty amazing to watch everybody come together. So I want to really congratulate all of you on doing, really an amazing job under, pretty difficult circumstances. So congratulations. And I know that it's made a big difference to our clients in this process. And so, good for all of us for making sure that we're monitoring health and safety, and we're also taking care of the people who we're responsible for. So let me, just one other little housekeeping thing too, before I forget. So please refrain from bringing up anything that is transactionally specific, okay? This is an open call, so we have agents, we have our agents, but we've also opened this up to the industry, so there could be other agents out, but I know there are, from outside of our organization on this call. So let's keep everything kind of, confidential. If you need to ask a transactional question, this probably isn't a specific one. This isn't the right venue for it, but certainly your sales director, Ed, myself, Jim, we're all here to answer questions for you. If you have some hypotheticals, this would be a great environment for it. And there's really nothing other than specific client information that's off limits here, right? So please feel free to ask anything. So let's kind of do a summary of where we are. And it's kind of hard to believe that this whole thing started 4 days ago from a planning perspective, right? We went into planning mode, at the end of last week and over the weekend, and we launched our first communication on Monday, and then we had our town hall meeting or RE vision call on Tuesday. And, it's amazing how things are literally developing, by the hour, right? And so first and foremost, in a continuity of business plan, which is how we look at this, is everyone's health and safety. So, where people have had, health issues, we've sent them home, or underlying health issues. Of course, if anyone's not feeling well, or you're feeling symptomatic, right, everybody understands this now, go home. And then we've put out, proper instructions for for our interactions with customers. And I'll have Joanne talk about this. On the closing side, we've put in place that basically it's the title, our regional title manager and the buyer, and then the regional title manager and the seller, not everyone together. And we're no offense to anybody, but we're disinviting the agents and loan officers and all that. And it's probably the only time you're gonna not be invited and feel good about it. And so we followed pretty stringent closing procedures at the office level. We have the offices generally open. We have some where the administrator or the manager can't be there because of health issues, but generally the offices are open with a skeleton crew. It's typically either the business support specialist or the manager, and agents kind of come and go, but most everybody's just working from home. So our office environments only have a couple people in them at most. And this is all about again, stability and continuity of business, along with following and being in excess of safety requirements, which is where we are right now. I have this automatic light in my office that goes off if I don't move. So we've got, so that's kind of how we're configured. We're watching everything on a regular basis, and watching things pretty much hourly. What's interesting amongst other things about this period of time is that we have our largest seasonal pipeline of under agreements that we've ever had for this time of year. So right now we have 800 pendings, which is basically 800 families, right, buy side, sell side, that are looking for that are looking to get into their homes, and about $220 million worth. So the number one priority, of course, is health and safety. And then followed by that is, how do we continue to, maintain our service and fiduciary obligations to our clients? It's funny because I think we don't look at it this way, but in a lot of ways, we're really a financial services organization, right? That's delivered through personal services agreements, right, through the agents. But we're literally handling, hundreds of millions of dollars and people's lives. And so this is one of those times where, we've, from a priority perspective, it's health and safety, and then how do we meet our ongoing obligations to take care of our clients who have trusted, their, a significant part of their financial future with us. So, those are our priorities about how we've laid everything out. And so I think what I'd like to do real quick is have Joanne, if Joanne could be unmuted, she could talk just a little bit about the closing process. And that'll give me a minute to just check on the chats. And then I'd like to have Angela talk for a minute, and then Ed as well. And I really can't stress enough the gifted nature of the people in this organization. It's just truly amazing. And a lot of what we've been putting out internally has been adopted nationally by Better Homes and Gardens. And we're also seeing it being replicated by various numbers of our competitors. So I think as far as providing the leadership through this event, right? I guess I'll just call it an event. What people want is they want safety and security, and people want someone to help them through this. And this is where you guys are excelling and doing an amazing job at that. It's a responsibility to lead people, whether it's our customers or whether it's all of us as an organization. We're all sharing in the leadership of this, right? you know, marketing producing material, agents giving us feedback, agents giving customers guidance, home office being open and available, you know, sales directors and administrators being willing to man, you know, the skeleton crew of the office, right, while the agents are working at home. This is really the quintessence of a shared leadership environment. And, you know, I don't want that to go unsaid, and I don't want that to go unappreciated, because I think really you guys are just amazing. So, Joanne?
Thank you, Chris. And I would just pick up right where you left off and thanking
Joanne, can you
everyone.
just introduce yourself for anybody who may not know you?
Yes, I can, Lorraine. Good morning, everyone. My name is Joanne Gogan, and I actually, Lorraine, if you want, you could unmute Jim Fleming, who did end up joining us as well. I am with Jim Fleming, and we lead Great East Title Services, and just want to pick up where Chris left off and thank you all. The leadership has been absolutely amazing. How you've been guiding your clients through a challenging time, and I know so many are balancing some of the social responsibilities and personal responsibilities. So few things that we're doing at Great East Title. You know, first and foremost, we start every day looking at it as truly a new day. I had, you know, by about 8:45 this morning, spoken with every member of our team just to level set on how the closings for the day will take place. Each closing is a different situation, as we all know and really love. So really, we've stepped back and we're doing what's right. So let me start with the basics. As Chris mentioned, we have just one signing party in the room at a time. We have cleaning supplies. We get to the closing location. We sanitize the room. We explain our protocol to the parties involved and conduct the closing at a very safe distance. I'll give you an example. Catherine Kessler, who many know, works in the greater Bangor region. She was in Ellsworth this morning. She had the room prepped. The buyer would sit 3 feet from her. She actually sent me a picture. And then the broker, the agent, stayed outside the room, but within about 7 feet, and could listen in. So we make accommodations based on the location. I know Mitch Fleming down in southern New Hampshire, he was making arrangements and going to offer folks to sit in their car while the signing was taking place, because he was signing off-site in the office, a little smaller, the reception area. We didn't want to overwhelm with parties waiting to come into the closing location. So, you know, it's each scenario is individual. Sending the documents in advance has proven to be extremely helpful, allowing clients to review the closing documents in their own environment prior to coming to closing is limiting the closing time. And in one instance, and this took place on Wednesday, we had our closing attorney in the Lewiston-Auburn region, Amin Nickel. She actually conducted the closing in the parking lot of the real estate office by having the clients come to the office. She slid the envelope of documents, you know, through the window. Once they were done signing, she was able to see them sign through the window so she could acknowledge the documents. And they were, you know, separated by the car window and each on the phone. So if there were questions and whatever Amy needed to review, she did. So, you know, again, these were two individuals that had been quarantined, but yet needed to sign. Their lender needed them to close. So I applaud all of, you know, our customers for trying to be solutions-based, and you know, our team for getting it done. Our operations team is working about, well, as of today, about 60% remotely, and you know, I'm proud of them. I I hope our service levels have not shown a decrease. We are working very hard to communicate with many parties to get them to different locations at times. So trying to be as responsive and communicative as possible. You know, there's questions surrounding the registries that have closed and are by appointment only. Great East Title does, you know, the majority of our work is filed electronically, and our underwriters have stepped up and come forth and given us some endorsement for title policies, acknowledging that we may or may not be able to get things on record as quickly as possible. So, you know, it's a true team effort, but it's a day-by-day approach because, as we all know, it changes. And we just have to be responsive to it, and we have to be, I think, you know, first and foremost, compassionate and you know, use empathy with all we do. Jim, do you want to chime in some of the other aspects we deal with?
I think that really covered it, Joe. The thing I do want to say about notarizations is their e-notarization has been implemented in a number of states and has been for a couple of years. And California, Texas, Florida, and some other states legislatures have enacted e-notarizations. There's been no movement on that in any of the New England states. However, I both and came across from the American Land Title Association just this morning. I forwarded it over to Joe. The Senate is introducing a national e-notarization bill. I haven't seen it because I just saw it this morning, and we've been very busy getting today's closings coordinated. So we'll get to it sometime later today or over the weekend. And we could very quickly and easily, or very quickly see an e-notarization act from Congress, and that would greatly simplify our situation now, but more importantly, it would have significant effects on how we close loans going forward, assuming it's not a temporary measure. And again, I haven't read the Senate bill. You know, our lawmakers are doing what they can as quickly as they can. It's my dog. What the heck's going on? I'm working from home. Joanne would not let me. I was all set and I was ready to come into the office this morning. Joanne said, "You're not coming into the office this morning." So, and I knew I was going to lose that argument. So, so that's really all I've got. We're seeing a lot of we're seeing some legal issues surrounding this crisis. You know, situations where people will not allow people into their homes, home inspectors, for example, appraisers. What are the contractual obligations? So we're taking those calls and just dealing with them on a case-by-case basis, because there is no one pat or fixed solution to the various situations that we're seeing out there. They really are on a case-by-case basis, and that's how we're handling them. So really, that's all I got.
Hey, Jim, as our attorney, we've had some questions come in, and what do you think about e-notarization as an attorney?
Oh,
yeah.
I can't wait for it. It's going to, just from a pure business perspective, that means that we could set up an e-notarization center with a screen in our office, and we don't even have to send a marketing representative out to a closing. Now, we may not use it in every instance, but it's available. And in the states where it is being used, it's very, very popular, Lorraine. And there's been no issues with fraud. The procedures for verifying the authenticity of the individual signing the documents are quite good. You know, we're still going to get identifications. And it will have a it will streamline the closing process, and it will actually speed up the closing process, even in normal times. So I'm looking forward to it.
All right, that's great, Jim. You know, while Jim's got the floor, so to speak, let's address a couple contractual issues that came up. So let's first talk about the virus clause. Now, Maine has issued a virus clause. I don't believe that as of yet New Hampshire has. I haven't seen it yet, but as of yesterday, I don't think it has.
I haven't seen it.
So a couple things. And we had a call with the sales directors on Wednesday. Seems like 6 months ago. And look, I think we have to understand this is an exceptionally fluid situation. So everything that we talk about is as of right now. And if things change, we'll obviously, you know, communicate this to you. But as of right now, I would only use the virus clause if it has actually impacted the transaction. In other words, I would not just take a brand new purchase and sales agreement and write the virus clause into it. I would use the virus clause if for some reason the virus somehow has impacted whether or not the closing is going to happen, if the transaction needs to be extended. So because the virus clause used independent of any reason of using it basically almost renders the agreement worthless. So because anybody could say at any given time, well, I got this problem, you know, whether they do or not, right? So my recommendation would be not to use it unless it's actually applicable to the transaction. We're getting a lot of questions about you know, what represents a breach. Now, you know, first and foremost, these are challenging times, right? So we need to be, you know, compassionate and empathetic about where people are. I mean, the real estate transaction in of itself can elicit certain emotions, and now all of a sudden we layer this in on top of it. It's makes it, you know, certainly emotionally more complicated. But a breach today of an agreement is no different than what a breach would have been, you know, in January or December. And, you know, so the advice that we're giving is, and I'll let Jim chime in, you know, the advice we're giving everybody is just that, you know, if there's a medical reason or, you know, a family has been infected, they can't close, or they've lost their job, or those types of things, right? Those are all reasons why something shouldn't happen. Somebody wakes up in the morning and just changes their mind. You know, the only advice we can give them is that, well, that's a breach. Now, that's complicated. That's going to be complicated by the fact that the courts are closed. And we are not in a position to return deposits. So, you know, that's like a whole nother level of complications that we haven't really gotten into yet. Now, what I can tell you though, is that we're seeing very few fall throughs as of right now. And our daily business, so I can tell you, we've developed a new report, which the managers are getting, and I guess we could probably share it with everybody now that I think about it. But it's a consolidated report that shows the activity. And so for new purchase and sales agreements, Monday was 30, Tuesday was 31, today's Friday, right? So Wednesday was 28 and yesterday was 29. So there is current business being transacted, and our daily listing numbers are anywhere between, you know, 20 and 30 listings a day, and that really hasn't tapered off either. I think I am going to share that report with everybody so you guys can see, can understand the trends the way that, you know, the sales directors are seeing them. But yeah, I think you got to be really careful about, you know, what's, you know, a breach today is the same thing as what a breach was 90 days ago. And I'd be really reluctant to start inserting that virus clause unless it's a transaction that is impacted, by the virus. Jim, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that sums it up pretty well, Chris. I did see a chat come across about what might we do with contracts, and let me reiterate what I said when we had our sales director meeting earlier this week. Chris's point is exact that the contract law has not changed because of the coronavirus. Now, there could be a possible exception to that, and more on that in a second, because I have talked to some of my colleagues about, my litigation colleagues, about how they think this might go if it came to this. But we don't want to use any kind of a standard pat clause or framework for the shifting of legal rights between parties. In my view, that in this instance rises to the unauthorized practice of law, because you can imagine there are any number of iterations of a contingency that you can put in shifting the rights and obligations of the various parties. And that should really be left to folks at discussing that with their own counsel. And that's what we recommend, is if somebody wants out of a contract, whether it's today or whether it was 6 months ago, we said, you got to talk to your attorney. It is case by case. All you can do is call me. We can't give advice to the members of the general public. I can only give you advice as to how I think something might go. But then I'm always going to finish the conversation by saying, have them consult their own counsel. If they don't have counsel, we have a network of attorneys all over New England. We can get them counsel. I think that's all I would say. Now, I would say this, the law related to contracts has not changed. And our contracts obviously did not contemplate the coronavirus. My recommendation is, if somebody says to you they don't want to give an extension, or if they're not cooperative, just keep in mind and remind them, without practicing law, that the law requires the exercise of good faith and due diligence in the performance of your obligations under a contract. And one of those obligations is contract. It's implied at law. The contracts don't have to say it. So your parties, I think, will be at risk if they fail to cooperate, because courts ask what is reasonable under the facts and circumstances of a given case. And if somebody's acting unreasonably, which may mean not giving an appropriate extension, and we have seen cases on that come down from the various Supreme Courts, where the Supreme Courts, for example, on the honor before provision, honor about, well, what does that mean? Somebody won't perform when that date comes and goes. Well, that's not how it works if you get in front of a judge, because judges have wide equitable powers, and they can reform a contract on their own. And my colleagues and I personally believe that the courts would do so. So it's really in the best interest, your best interest, to in the performance of your duty to promote the interests of your client, to advise them that they should cooperate to the extent that's reasonably possible to facilitate the ultimate consummation of that transaction. So that really confirms what Chris says. We want to just keep doing business as usual. Parties just cooperate. The good news is that with the coronavirus thing, we've seen generally and largely that people are trying to work together to keep these deals together. We have a deal pending right now over in Nottingham. It's not a coronavirus case, but it illustrates the fear. Sellers right now believe that because of the upset in the market, that if they don't close their current transactions, they may not find another buyer, because they think the buyers might be skittish. Of course, Chris just gave us numbers that suggest otherwise, but of course, the perception of the public is really what's important rather than the reality. That perception becomes their reality. So we see people who want to keep the deals together. So really, that's all I got, Chris.
That's great, Jim. Just stay on just 1 second. Somebody brought up a very, a very important point that I don't think we want to skip over. Is want to know if homeschooling included husbands, and can we homeschool our husbands? Now, I'm assuming that homeschooling our husbands to make sure that we can maybe reform their behavior. And I would say that that would be not appropriate during this crisis. So just want to leave that out there. Another question, somebody asked about whether or not these purchase and sales agreements are cash. We don't really track those that way. But that's a good question. Let's see what we can do about that. Another question about if a buyer is contracting, I'm just going to read it. What about a buyer discovering that the seller had contracted the virus during a walkthrough? You know what? I don't know. I think there are going to be certain things that we're just going to have to deal with and talk people through. Are they still comfortable closing? Would they be obligated to close? I think that would be an issue. If somebody found out that, just prior to closing, that the house that they're contracted to close on, somebody's contracted the virus, would they be obligated to close? I think that's a good place where you would insert, that if you could extend the closing, for a couple of weeks and get beyond the incubation period or whatever guidelines are prevailing at the time. I don't know, Jim, any thought on that? Or?
I really don't, Chris, and only what I see on the news, and even the authorities don't know what they're going to do. Some have suggested that they're going to make it a misdemeanor, that if you know that if you're infected and then you expose yourself to others, that could be a misdemeanor. Well, people say, what's a big deal? It's a misdemeanor. Well, you can get a year in jail for a misdemeanor, a year and a day to be exact. So, but the authorities are hesitant to do that. The question is, how do you know? I suppose the only way you know is if a physician tells you have it. And what is the negligence standard around this? I'm not a tort attorney, but the elements of a tort are fairly simple, although it's a complex area of the law in its application. You have a duty, you have a breach of duty, and you have a causation, a nexus, and you have damages. That's it, 4 elements. But so the question is, what is your duty? And I think we all, under the circumstances, probably have some social duty, if not an explicit legal duty, but certainly a part of our social and moral obligations to not expose people. And I don't know anybody that would expose anybody else deliberately, but I suppose if you did, and you did so deliberately, as in the case of the AIDS epidemic of some years ago, that could very well be a felony if somebody were were to pass away or to become seriously ill. Yeah. So all I can give is all I can say is to use a phrase often used by courts. It's a rule of reasonableness. Just be thoughtful and reasonable, and then we'll be okay.
Yeah. So a couple other chats coming in. So there seems to be pretty significant interest in the topic of homeschooling husbands. I'll ask Diane Jenkins up at the school if maybe we can get a 3-hour credit course for how to homeschool your husband. I'll see if we can get the real estate commissions to approve it. Open houses. So so this is how fast things move, right? I gave original guidance, right, that we're not discouraging showings or open houses, and that was on Monday, and that was based on, the gathering of no more than 50 people, right? And then that immediately changed to 10. Well, once it changed to 10, from my perspective, then an open house to me really is not a very good idea, because in the aggregate, you certainly could have more than 10 people at the open house, right? And I think that's the spirit, the intent of that, is not to be exposed to more than, groups of 10 people. So I don't think the open houses are really a very good idea. And I'll let Angela talk about some alternatives. Yeah, so I don't think that's a very good idea at all. A couple of other things that have come in. So buyers who have lost their jobs, which has now affected their qualifications. So that would be no different than someone losing their job in any other moment in time. So if we were to remove the virus, right, from the home purchasing environment, and somebody was working for XYZ company and they lost their job, under normal circumstances, they typically wouldn't be able to qualify for the mortgage anyways, unless they were putting down a lot of cash or they had other resources. So, that would certainly be a legitimate reason why something wouldn't close. Now, on the flip side of that, if someone has, just because someone sustained, financial losses in the stock market, that in and of itself isn't a reason why they can't close, unless for some reason it was a cash transaction and they lost all their assets. So everything is highly situational, I think, like Jim was saying. You really got to watch like every situation. As a relate, another question came in about foreclosures. People losing their jobs or having financial hardship during this period of time, there's already pending legislation for foreclosures being postponed or extended. Also, the same thing with evictions. That's already out there. You can't get evicted right now. So you're going to see a lot of legislation come out that will be appropriately based consumer protection legislation for people who are experiencing financial hardship during this period of time. Somebody has brought up, I've heard this a couple times, about, well, what's the market going to look like down the road? Well, although we don't know this, if you take a look at the inventory situation, if you were to remove, and I'm going to, Joanne and I were talking about this morning on the way in, if you were to remove 10, I'm going to say it this way, 10 to 20% of all buyers from the housing market right now, you would be removing typically probably the buyers that are of lesser qualification, maybe, let's put it that way. And you would still be in an unbalanced inventory situation. So, removing a chunk of the buyers from the market, I don't believe is going to upend it, because you still are, nationally, we're still 4 million housing units short on family formations in the last 8 years. And every year that goes by, we're 300,000 housing units short. So, and we're predicted to, the demographic trend through 2028 is the new family formation, so 2 or more, right, of 16 million people. And that's what's going to leave us 300,000 housing units short every single year until 2028. So I think it's really unlikely that this upends the housing market. Will we see it slow a little bit? I think that's probably reasonable to expect. Lorraine came up with an article that she found about, that this is not a housing crisis. And even though we're seeing layoffs and the stock market is certainly had better days, fundamentally the underpinnings of the economy are really pretty good. And over and above that, I think you're also going to see a lot of, and you're already seeing the talk about it now from companies like, Apple and these different companies where they've, offshored a lot of their production. And now their production is being delayed because of poor health conditions, right, in these various countries. And I think what you're going to find is people will be onshore, corporations, right, manufacturers, will be onshoring a fair amount of production back here, in the United States. It'll be really interesting on the other end of this to see what happens. My sense about it is that, once we get in the title sense, as we get, right, in a real estate sense, once we get the clear to close on the other side of this virus, I think you're going to see the economy take off like a shot. I'm very optimistic. I think there's going to be a lot of really good reasons to see manufacturing, financial investment, and all that be centered back here in the United States. So that's just my personal feeling. It's just based on what I know of the economy, what I know of history, and things like that. So let's.
We had a question. What should we be telling our sellers who are nervous about people coming in their homes for showings? Even with the precautions of removing shoes and sanitizing the best they can, washing their hands. If sellers are still skittish about that, what should our agents be telling them?
Angela, do you want to take that?
Happy to. Yeah, so I think it's like with everything, right? We want to really be talking with our sellers. What do our sellers want to do? Okay. Again, what's the real estate question is what we're here to answer, right? What's the real estate question? What does our seller want to do? So if the seller doesn't want to have showings, how about a virtual showing, right? You could do a virtual showing in the house. That's a thing to do. We can do that from Facebook Live. You can get a free Zoom link and do it through Zoom if you want to do that, right? If you can do it through Instagram and Snapchat at this point. There's so many different ways that you can do video with people, FaceTime. So if someone is really interested in the home, a great way to do it is take them through video, right? And we can put it under agreement through video. You can have a clause that they need to see the house in the next 14 days or something like that. So I would say it's a good time for us to get creative, right? But kind of treat it like, yeah, somebody just went, virtual tours in Matterport. And that's actually, I've got a few notes here. And one of the things I want to talk about as far as your listings, right? So Heather up in Tilton came up with this great app that she found called Magic Plan. Super easy to use, and you can go through the home and you can do a floor plan. So I think now more than ever, right, the listings that are going to have virtual tours in them, you're going to walk through the home, do the virtual tour, you're going to have the floor plan. More and more what people can see online is going to help you. So if you're using Matterport, continue to do that. If you're using another form of technology, there are other virtual tour technologies out there. If you're using those, continue to do that. Check out Magic Plan, right? Most of you are home right now. Map out your own house. How fun would that be? Go through, map out your own house. You'll know how to use it. You'll be able to use it for your sellers. So those are some of the things I would be thinking about doing, is just those alternatives if your seller does not want the home shown now. My Roomba maps my house. I love that, Andrea. That's great. Cleans and maps at the same time. Super.
Yeah, and Susan Moore just pointed out there we have a sight unseen addendum in Maine, which I'm sure, if there's a discrepancy between documents between Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, we can always draft, new addendum for the other states. So that's a great point about the sight unseen addendum, Susan. Thank you.
Yeah, so a lot of cool things that you can do. To get just off that topic a little bit, right? Because you really do want to be staying in touch with your people as much as you can through this period. And one of the cool things I've seen some people doing, and I think it would be super for you guys to do, because we're human, right? And we care. And I think it's important to show that right now. But how about you go on Facebook and you make a group on Facebook, or you just go on yourself and say, hey, I know everybody might be having a little hard time. What's your business? Do you have a side business at home? Do you sell Color Street nails? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? Post your link here, right? I want everybody to be exposed to everybody else's business. And so what are some little things that you can do to help your communities out right now? I know we've got the York office, I believe, Terry down in York, and I know Michelle's doing it at Midcoast. They're connecting with their chambers for people that are elderly, and they're dropping things off at their houses, right? So they've adopted some families. They need people to go out and get stuff for them. They're going out and get stuff. They're dropping it on the doorstep, those kind of things. So there's some neat things going on right now that our people are doing to help people. So I think that's really important, because I think Chris is right? When this is all past us, we're going to go off like a shot. And those of you that are staying in touch with people, but doing it very genuinely, right? And in a very caring way, it's really important that you stay in touch with your people right now.
Yeah, and that was on my list of things to talk about later on is where we have the capability of helping people who are stranded at home. I would like us as an organization to make that one of our priorities, to reach out to the Chamber of Commerce's, and I think Michelle Ridley has done this, and Angela, maybe you can just expand on it just a little more, that we as an organization really, it's one of the things we can do to make ourselves available to do home deliveries and things like that for people who are stranded at home. So we'll more formalize that effort. We got a couple more weeks of this at least, right? And I think we can really help people out that are stranded. Just a matter of leaving things on people's doorsteps and getting that coordinated. So how did Michelle do that up in
Sure. And Jessica, if you can post more, I see Jessica in the chat posting a little bit about it. So if you can also post more in the chat about it, Jess, so people can see that there. But I believe it was a Chamber of Commerce effort that they jumped out onto. There's a virtual sign-up sheet that people can sign up, see what they need. If I remember correctly, Jess, didn't she go out and grab a prescription for someone the other day? She just, she left the office for a little bit, went out, grabbed the prescription at the pharmacy for the people, went back, dropped it on their doorstep, that kind of thing. So just, just super cool. I mean, part of the reason we all know you're in real estate, right, is because you care about people, right? And this just is a natural way for you to continue with that caring right now, because there are people out there that need us, and I think it's just it's really good. People are isolated right now, and they just need to know that there are other people out there that care about them.
So I think that's something that we can do to help people, and it's very easy to do. The other thing too, I don't know what you guys have been doing, but certainly, ordering takeout from these restaurants, it's going to be hard, right? The restaurants tend to run on, pretty thin margins as it is. So anything we do to help them out. And somebody asked about evictions. So evictions and foreclosures. So right now, there's a moratorium on evictions and of any type. So, and I believe that will extend. I don't know this, but I'm quite sure, though, based on the intent around legislation, is that'll extend to foreclosures. You won't have foreclosures because of this. I'm just telling you right now. I don't know what the end game will be. I don't know if it'll be a 6 months of extension. I don't know if there'll be financial aid or whatever. But you won't, for the time being, you won't have foreclosures. And Mark Oswald in Londonderry brought up a really good point. And it's one of the reasons why I said that you could remove 10 or 20% of the buyers from the market and still actually, be okay. Is that people need a roof over their head, and rents are expensive, and interest rates are low. Affordability is, rates kind of spiked a little bit recently, but long term, affordability has gone up almost 20% with the lower rates. So again, this isn't a housing crisis, and it's not an economic crisis like we had in 08. I was thinking about the other day, I've been in a leadership position through the 87 crash, the dot-com bubble, 9/11, '08, and now this, and they're all different. The one thing they share, though, is that they are only moments in time, and they pass. And but underlying in this particular case, this is not a financial system issue. This is not a housing issue. It's not really even an economic issue. And although you will have some economic fallout because of it, fundamentally, though, it's still not an economic issue. So let's see what else we got here.
We had another question. I know we can't, we don't have a crystal ball, can't see into the future, but California has issued a shelter-in-place order. Should that happen here in New Hampshire, would we still be permitted to do inspections? Do we know the answer?
Yeah. Well, look, a shelter-in-place order, it comes at different levels. It could come at a municipality level. It could come at a state level. It could come at a federal level. San Francisco has a shelter-in-place order. I don't know what other cities do. Does New York City have a shelter-in-place order? I don't think so.
I don't believe so.
I don't think so. I think it's just San Francisco. Texas just barely closed school, and a shelter-in-place order is a game changer, though.
It's the whole state of California.
Yeah, no, shelter-in-place order is we're all staying home. And that's the reason why everything we're doing really is monitoring everything on a daily, on an hourly basis. And at the end of every day, we're back here and, consulting, with me and Ed and Angela and Mike and Amanda, Joanne, Lorraine, we're all consulting on, okay, well, what's this look like, at the end of the day? And we're also, reaching out to the offices. This morning, Nancy Walsh and I were talking on the way in. Nancy Proctor and I talked yesterday. I mean, we're making outbound calls, just to get a sense of what's happening with the managers and all that. But a shelter-in-place order is a game changer. That's no closings, everyone's staying home. No showings, nothing. I don't believe we will be at that point. I just don't see that. So I think state by state. I mean, New York. Probably the closest to us would be New York, and they haven't done that yet. And I kind of don't think they will either. That's really drastic. So that is a game changer, but I don't believe that's going to happen, especially Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont. I just don't see it.
Casey had a question that I think this is where we can step in and help. Her question was about sellers who may be hesitating to list right now. They really want to, but they're just not really sure. So I think we can easily put together some talking points and some best practices and suggestions on that. And we'll share that out on our webpage. But if you have anything to offer now.
Lorraine, Chris, Joanne sent me a text. She spotted a question on the chat, a good one. And that is, with possible delays in recording documents, can the listing agent turn over the keys, or should the seller turn over the keys to the buyer? Our policy on that really isn't going to change much. Let's start with first. It's probably not going to be very likely because we e-record, so we don't go to the registries in most instances. Joanne, what percentage of cases are we e-recording on? Joanne, you're on mute.
About 95%.
Yeah, so we're talking a very small percentage. First American just came out with a policy on this yesterday. The policy is really not much different than the one we follow right now. It's this. It depends. It really is a judgment call. It's part of our underwriting process. And when we do a title, we examine a file. We don't have to see a seller's 1003 or a credit report to know whether or not this seller pays his or her bills on time, whether or not they've got troubles. If we see somebody who doesn't pay their tax bills on time, if we see somebody who's got an attachment or got a lien, we don't pass out checks and we don't turn over keys until we go to record. For the most part, though, in probably 99, 95, 90, a very large percentage of the cases, we don't have those problems. People pay their taxes, people pay their bills. So unless we have some notice that they're in distress, they're going to foreclosure, for example, we go ahead and we're going to continue to disperse at the closing tables and allow people to, hand over the keys, and we'll assume that risk. So it's our gap risk, and we take it very seriously. And a lot of times what we do is if we've got a seller that we know to be troublesome, divorces, we're very careful with divorces. We run them up just prior to the closing. We might run them up while they're at the closing. We can do it all online. So it's just a matter of a couple, 3 minutes, 5 minutes maybe. So I don't foresee that as creating any issues for our agents.
No, but a very good question. And I would just like to say thank you. I also see a number of folks that have their notary saying if you ever need a notary, and today we proudly report that our entire team remains healthy, but that is a very generous thing to offer. So thank you.
A couple other questions have come through just to get back to that, people reluctant to put their house on the market. Look, they can put their house on the market and you can screen it, right? And you can screen the showing, you can be asking certain questions and you can give them, some assurances. Yeah, fundamentally, if they're uncomfortable with it, they should do it. But, we can provide, reasonable procedures around it. Or, the other part is we can go to a virtual showing. And then if the party is interested, on a virtual showing, then we can make arrangements for, a physical showing. So I think it depends on what their circumstances are, of course, what their comfort level is and what their level of urgency is. And that's where it's just getting into situationally consulting with people. Paul out of Londonderry just, made a really good point. He said, isn't real estate essential? Well, yeah, I mean, the banks aren't closed. And frankly, when you take a look at the volume of money that we handle for people, I know sometimes we don't necessarily look at it this way, but, when you take a look at the volume, we have 800 families right now that we're responsible for right now. And that number is growing every day. And over $200 million of people's money. So I don't know if we would get classified as an essential service. However, we certainly operate like we are, right? Another couple questions about shelter-in-place orders. I think you'll see cities do shelter-in-place orders. You'll see states, some. But that's a really serious thing. It would have to be really, really, really dire for there to be a national shelter-in-place order. That comes with all sorts of complications. I'm not going to get into them here. And Mark Oswald said that I think it was Massachusetts or New York that they're suspending mortgage payments if you got laid off. There's New York State. Thanks for looking that up, Mark. Yeah, you're going to see that. You're going to see all sorts of relief. So there's going to be a huge safety net for people, coming out from under this.
Hey, Chris, can I jump in for a sec?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you it. Thank you.
So I've gotten a few questions over the last couple of days, specifically around things like price reductions for sellers, recommendations on price reductions or recommendations on when to put your house on the market. And one of the things that I've been saying to people is some things just haven't changed. One of them is we have to be sensitive to and understand what the seller's motivations are and where they are right now just in their real estate world. And and then guide them there. And the other thing is, we only know what we know today. And so based on what we know today, what's the best course of action for helping, you know, our sellers and our buyers? So I think it's important to stay focused on what we are. We're not attorneys. We're not epidemiologists. We're not forecasters or soothsayers, right? We're real estate professionals, and we understand how the process works, and we understand helping people solve their real estate problems. And if we just stay focused on that piece of it, then I think we can give really good advice to our clients, whether they're buyers or sellers, whether they're on the market now or not on the market now. And the last thing on that would be, I think it's extremely important right now to stay connected, not only to each other. I think it's amazing that we have over 200 people on this call right now, and not just Masiello Group people, but also people from other companies. And we're in this kind of situation where by staying connected to each other at all levels and staying connected to our clients, I think we can do a really good job for everyone. We're in a unique position in the economy as workers, and this is an opportunity for us to shine.
Yeah, well said. And you had some really great ideas too about connectivity, things that people can be doing now, and all that CRM stuff. And
yeah, so most of my great ideas I stole from Angela, and we'll continue to do so as long as she'll let me.
well,
But
when we conduct the homeschooling husband class, that'll be corrected. So
I'm looking forward to being corrected. I think that there are probably ideas out there, and this is why the connection between all of us is so important. I think there's a lot of ideas out there that are unique, but some of the standard ones are just working through your CRM, use your social media connections to be of service to people, and just up the engagement. When there's a contradiction that goes on in our society right now, where on the one hand, what we want to do is we want to stay at home. Every single person wants to limit their exposure to everybody else. And yet this is the time when we really need to be connected to each other at a much higher level. And as you and I were talking this morning, it's not 1994, it's 2020. And our ability to connect with people is much greater than it ever was before. And so we should just look for those opportunities to be of service and to provide value to people, and to do that through connectivity.
yeah, and you know what's fascinating about that is that we've made investments in technology and infrastructure over the last few years, just because it's what we do, right? And things that we take for granted now, like this, like you just said, having 200 people on a video call at, you know, with 1 day's notice. It's just normal. It's just normal for us. It's just what we do, you know? And so, you know, whether it's electronic, you know, file management or, you know, something like this. And, you know, we're deploying a new, entirely new communication system that we're doing office by office now. We even give us, you know, greater capabilities. So,
But and our strengths as our company is the support that we give to our agents, so that our agents can support the clients. And you said before, there are phenomenal people working in our company, in the marketing department, in the IT department, in the legal department, and our partners. And we're all focused on that one thing. And but fundamentally, it's the connectivity between all of us. And I just want to say thank you for doing this call, Chris, because as the leader of the largest real estate company in northern New England, to take the time to connect this way with everyone in the community is just huge.
well, hey, we're all in it together. It's an amazingly gifted group of people. I'm just, you know, we're all just part of the same team, right? That's why we're here, to support each other. Catherine sent thoughts on hand delivering listing packets to sellers or mail it, I would just hand deliver stuff, just leave it on the front step. And if people are nervous about it, I think this is really about people's comfort level. It's interesting, I've made it a point to be in a lot of different places to observe. And my one observation is that, aside from people hoarding toilet paper and some of these other things you see, right? Aside from that, people are pretty optimistic. And, I was at the gym for a couple hours Sunday morning. It's since closed, but I was at the gym, pretty full crew for a Sunday morning, and then I purposely went to Target, and then I went to Price Chopper, and then I went to the local co-op. I went to as many places as I could just to kind of get a sense. And I've done that, in the last, all week, really, and people are smiling and they're happy. I was at Starbucks this morning, and, so, you get the sense that people understand that this is kind of just a moment in time, and how do we navigate that? And I think that applies, to housing. And like Mark said, people got to live someplace. Living in shelter is not, it's not a trend. It's a permanent fact. So, and what other things can people be thinking about doing, for their own, education or any of that?
Well, I think Lorraine put out an announcement about some online training that's going on out of Better Homes and Gardens. Actually, she just posted it to everyone.
Nice.
So there are some opportunities like that. I can't get past the fact that we constantly learn from each other. Some of the virtual open house stuff came from conversations I had with some sales directors, Donna Gary and others. Heather McAfee came up with and found a really cool tool that you can use to stabilize video. So there's a lot to learn from this, from each other.
No doubt. Okay, how are we doing on questions? Seems like we're kind of running out of steam here. And this feels like something we should do again soon, like maybe next Wednesday or something like that, Tuesday or Wednesday. Today's Friday, right? So let's give it a couple days. Maybe we'll do another one Wednesday, sooner if we need it. Here's the thing I want to tell everybody. We are all here to support you. I get text messages, phone calls, emails. Ed's getting them, home office is getting them, Angela's getting them, sales directors are getting them. You've got a lot of people that are there to support you. So, make sure that you're reaching out, as the old expression goes, which is probably more poignant today, is that there's no such thing as a stupid question. We're all here to support, your kind of unique circumstances, because we're gonna see a lot of them, and we're kind of cataloging them. And like I said, I can't emphasize this enough. This is an hour by hour thing, where we're watching everything. I want to give you, if you guys would indulge me for a minute, kind of a little historical perspective. I'll make it brief. So North America, United States, Canada, we're basically like a big island, right? We have water, right, to the west and to the east and to the north, right? So we always look at ourselves as kind of like a lot of things don't apply to us. And although I wasn't around, of course, after Pearl Harbor, but I bet you this is what it felt like. Because, before our involvement in the Second World War, war raged in Europe and it raged in Asia. No different than the virus raged in Europe and raged in Asia. And at some level, I'm sure a lot of us, like back then, figured that getting involved in the Second World War was optional. Like, if we want to get involved, we'll get involved, until Pearl Harbor. And then, well, you're involved now. And I think it's the same thing here. I think maybe because of this historical mindset we have, because we're surrounded by water, that that we're immune to things. And, you know, we just found out in the last, 10 days we're not. And I think that that's, probably a unique position that North America in particular finds itself. And now that we're in it, typically when we're in something, we're in it to win it. And, that's why I always look at this as just a moment in time. And no different than in 1941, 42, when it was kind of grim. Everybody developed a new normal. And that's what we're going to be developing as a new normal. That's how we're going to operate. But fundamentally, we've got a sound economy. We've got, good fundamentals. We've got really an amazing citizenry in this country and resources. And, you kind of see that in everybody, right? Where the kind of the shock of it, which I'm sure must have been like what the shock was right after Pearl Harbor, right? How could this happen to us? And I think probably there's a little bit of that here. Well, how could this happen to us? But it's happened. And here's where we're at, here's where we are, and now let's figure out how to make it work. And you sense that resiliency, in the nation. And I think, we'll be getting back to a sense of normalcy, I feel confident, much sooner as opposed to later. So very optimistic. So, so get us your questions and whatever you need. We'll continue to provide updates. We're reworking documents as we're getting feedback, the showing documents and things like that, and those procedures, we're reworking them all the time. And we'll schedule another one of these. Let's shoot for Wednesday, and earlier if we need be, okay? So you guys have a great weekend. Again, feel free to reach out. You're all amazing. You're doing wonderful work. And take a moment and a breath. Be proud of yourself, be proud of what you're doing, and be proud of each other. You're doing a great job.